Hello and welcome back. If you're new around here, my name is Heather. I am a crime writer. I talk about true crime, the supernatural, writing, books, and many other things depending on where my brain goes on that day. Today we're going to be talking about the haunting in Connecticut and what really happened in the story behind the film. The Haunting in Connecticut has had a couple of movies, I think. It was, in fact, investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigators from the Conjuring franchise. You may know them from things such as Annabelle, The Conjuring, and other business that they done did. So without further ado, let's get on to The Haunting in Connecticut and weasel out some liars, some skeptics, mortuaries in the basement, embalming fluid, the smell of dead people, creepy funeral home tours, and estate agents. Ooh, the scariest of the lot. Fucking estate agents. I'm in the process of moving house and estate agents. So, the story of The Haunting in Connecticut. The Snedeker family moved from their home to Connecticut because their son had Hodgkin's lymphoma, an aggressive form of cancer, and they needed to be closer to the hospital where he was being treated. They had 4 children in total and hefty medical bills, so any money that they could save on travelling was a great accomplishment. They found the house that they moved into, and it was incredibly cheap for what they were expecting. So they took it up. With 4 children and massive medical bills for one of them, any way to cut costs is welcome. When they moved into the property, they realised why it was so cheap. Downstairs was the remnants of a funeral home. There were embalming tables and tools left out from the previous owners. Instead of leaving or complaining, which is what I would do in that situation, I would yeet the fuck out of there. Instead of doing that, they converted the old funeral home into the bedroom of their 3 youngest sons. To be honest, I wouldn't mind living in a haunted home. It depends who's in there. If they're nasty, no. But if they're nice, then I don't mind having the odd ghostly companion. Only if they're nice though, and don't steal my forks, because there might be something in this flat that I'm in at the moment that keeps stealing all my forks. I don't know where all my forks have gone, they just go. So something is following me around that steals all my forks. Their mother, Carmen, began noticing things going missing in their home. One of the children began noticing things appear in the home, and strange things started coming in the corner of their room. This son was eventually diagnosed with schizophrenia after suffering a complete personality change and attacking one of his cousins that came to stay. Whatever was in that house was malicious. The children heard chains pulling the coffins in the downstairs bedroom, but there were no coffins found when they moved into the house. The family's problems escalated quickly, with Carmen and her husband Alan eventually claiming to have been fondled by the ghosts inappropriately. In their claims, they said they had been sexually abused by the ghosts living in the house. They saw the ghosts that were there, and the house smelled like rotting flesh, which is a well-known sign of something demonic being in the house. So it was time to get help. Enter stage left, Ed and Lorraine Warren, paranormal investigators to the stars. Under their belts, they have a collection of 10,000 paranormal investigations, and they have even built an occult museum in their home where they keep the possessed doohickeys that they collected from these investigations. The museum is now closed. They're looking for a permanent residence for it and how to transport it all safely, because if they bonk anything, then they could release whatever's in there God knows where, and nobody needs that bollocks. Everyone needs nice things. It's currently being run by their son-in-law, Tony. I want to say his name is Tony. I think his name is Tony. I'm going with the spirits are telling me Tony. We're going with Tony. Whilst Carmen was on the phone to the Warrens, Lorraine remembers her screaming and things in the background growling. She was even holding rosary beads in her hand that were being pulled apart as she held them. The Warrens came to investigate, and to get the full paranormal experience, they decided that they were going to stay in the old funeral home. Out is booted the three sons, and in the Warrens move, and they stayed there for weeks, trying to get a hold of what was going on in the house. They found that the owners of the funeral home practiced necromancy. So summoning the dead, bringing the dead back to life, like my boys here. And the previous owners had managed to infuse the home with a great evil. Unlike my boys, these are not evil. But during a blessing being performed by a priest, the Warrens weren't going to start mucking about with all that stuff on their own. Ed, who had recently suffered a massive heart attack, began to feel extreme heart palpitations. They decided quickly enough was enough, and they wrote to a priest wanting an exorcism. During the exorcism, a large tree from the back garden fell through the house. The events quietened down after this, and the Warrens deemed the property safe to move back into. Now, if that had all happened in my house, and the previous owners had been fiddling with dead bodies, and they didn't only practice necromancy, where trying to bring it back to life, but they also fiddled them. They did that too. They fiddled the dead, but they fiddled with them. I wouldn't really want to live there. And if during an exorcism, whatever was in the house pulled a tree down onto my house because they were pissed off, go somewhere else, mate. As with any haunting story, there came claims about its validity. A lot of people thought it was bullshit. There were claims that the family was making it up to sell stories to help pay for the medical bills. It would pay off a hefty chunk of the son's medical bills, and if you were tight for money, I mean, I sell stories for money, that is part of my job. Why not go global with it? I'm not going to do that. Also, the estate agent that sold them the house said that they did actually tell them what the house used to be used for, and there was an old funeral home in just there, still just there, chilling, hanging out, where dead bodies were fiddled with. The author who wrote the book was told by Ed Warren to take what facts that the Warrens had collected and run with it to make a much scarier story. This didn't help the credibility of the Warrens, because once the story was deemed a hoax, it hurt the credibility of their paranormal investigations. Despite how many paranormal investigations they had done, people were like, okay, these people are starting to get... Do you remember my last video about the Enfield haunting, when they were involved in that? This didn't help. Now, there wasn't a lot of information on the original story for The Haunting in Connecticut. I looked on many sites, and a lot of information was there. I didn't want to watch the films. I wanted to find out what the real story was, because if you watch the films, you kind of think that, oh, that happened, where a lot of it didn't. Like in The Conjuring 2, in the Enfield haunting, it said that the Warrens were the main paranormal investigators. They weren't. They showed up for a day and then pissed off. So in this one, I really wanted to find out what actually happened in the words of the family and the words of the Warrens. However, there was a lot of claims that came up around it saying that it was in fact a load of horse bollocks. But I will leave it up to you. What do you think happened with The Haunting in Connecticut? Do you believe in the paranormal, or do you think that this family were lying through their teeth? I don't know. I would like to believe them because I believe in the paranormal, but then again, I'm not sure. That's all for this one. If you want to subscribe, I'd like that. I'd like that very much. And so will my boys. They would enjoy that. They would like to see you again. So I will see you next time.